Hi everyone, Miss Aislison here. Today we're going to be working on Unit 2, LT2 notes, product and power rules of monomials. So monomial is a number, a variable, or a product of a number that has one or more variables. Monomials that are numbers are called constants. So a product of a power, there's a rule with that, and when multiplying powers, you need to add their exponents. Okay, so remember an exponent, for example, is that little tiny 6 on that A. So that would be my exponent. So I have a to the 6 times a to the third. Okay, and I know they're being multiplied because there's no other symbol in the middle. There's not adding, there's not subtracting, it's not showing division, so I know it's being multiplied. So if we go with our rule, when multiplying powers, we're going to add the exponents. So we're going to add that 6 and that 3 together. So that's going to turn into A6 plus 3. Because they both have an A on them, we can just add that 6 plus that 3, which equals A to the 9th. Okay, and there's one other thing that the slides didn't go through, but anything to the 0 power equals 1. So the whole thing equals 1. So if I had, let's say a to the 0, all of that together equals 1. So that a to the 0 is going to come out as a 1. Okay, so let's look at number 1. We have 3x to the third, y, x, and y to the fourth. Okay, so what we know is we have to when we're multiplying, we have to add the exponents, but we can only add exponents of a like base. So x's can only go with x's and y's can only go with y's. If there's no number with your x or your y, there's actually a little tiny 1 up there. So I'm going to say y to the 1, x to the 1, and then y to the fourth. So now we're going to go out. I know my first number is going to be a 3. So I'm going to start with putting a 3 out on the outside, okay? And then I'm going to start with my x, and I have x to the third right here, and I have x to the 1. So I'm going to say 3 plus 1. And then I'm going to write in my y's. I have y to the first, whoops, that's not what I want to. Y to the first and y to the fourth. So I'm going to go ahead and write in y to the first plus y to the fourth. Okay, my number out front is going to stay the same because I have nothing that I can multiply it with. So my 3 stays a 3. My x, I have x to the 3 and x to the 1. That's going to be x to the fourth. And I have y, the first, plus y to the fourth. So that's going to be y to the fifth. So that's going to be my final answer. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with number 2. I'm going to first see, do I have to add any numbers on? Well, I see that I have -2, p to the third, q to the second, r to the 2. I also have p to the first, q to the first, and r to the first. Okay, so I'm going to start out with my -2. That's going to come out front. And then I'm going to start with my p's. I have p to the third, and I also have p to the first. Okay, a 3 plus a 1 is going to give me, so I have p to the third plus p to the first. Now I'm going to go to my q's. My q's say I have q to the second, and I have q to the first. So I'm going to come back here and write q to the second plus q to the first. Now I'm going to go with my r's. I have r to the second and r to the first. So r to the second plus the first. Okay, now I can go back and condense that a little bit. So I have -2, p to the 3 plus 1 is 4, q to the 2 plus 1 is 3, and r to the 2 plus 1 is 3. So I have -2, p4, q to the third, r to the third. Okay, if we start with number 3, I have -26, x, y to the third, z to the 8, x, y, and z. So first thing I'm going to do is come and put a power on anything that does not have a power so I don't forget about them. So I have x to the first, and then I have x to the first over here, y, and z. Okay, so I'm going to start with my negative 26. Then I'm going to look at my x's. I have an x right here, and I have an x right here. Those are my only x's. So I have x to the first plus another x to the first. Okay, and then I'm going to go through and look at my y's. So I have y to the third right here. I also have y to the first right here. So then it's just going to be y to the 3 plus the other y to the 1. I'm going to look at my z's. I have z to the 8 and z to the first. So I have z to the 8 plus the first. Okay, so now I go through and condense that. So I have negative 26, x, 1 plus 1 is 2, y, 3 plus 1 is 4, and z, 8 plus 1 is 9. Okay, number 4, we have 2, x to the 0, y, x to the 3, z to the 3. Okay, right away I notice that I have x to the 0. And if you remember, anything to the 0 power equals 1. So that means all of this comes out and it really just equals 1. So that's like saying 2 times 1. Well, 2 times 1 equals 2. So we can just kind of ignore the fact that it's there because it's not going to change anything at all because that changes to whole number 1. So 2 times 1 is 2. So we can just ignore the fact that that x to the 0 is even there right there. Okay, then we have y. There's no number, so I'm going to put a little 1 on it. X to the 3, z to the 3. So we have them all. So I'm going to start with my whole number 2. Okay, I have, when I'm looking, I have x to the 3 right here, and I don't have any other x's. So I can go ahead and write right away that I have x to the 3. Okay, after x comes a y. You want to try to get these in alphabetical order. So next comes y to the first. I don't have any other y's, so I'm just going to write y. And finally, I have my z. And I have z to the third. So that, and I don't have any other z's, so I'm going to say z to the third. Okay, if you remember from the slide before, anything to the 0 power is 1. So right here, I have a number, all of that is taken to the 0 power. And you see that 0 on the outside? That means that 0 is going to kind of distribute to each one of those numbers. Okay, so when it's distributed to each one of those numbers, all of this turns into, just like before, all of that turns into 1. So my answer for that, because that 0 is on the outside of the parenthesis, is going to be a 1. Okay, this next one, because we have this little 3 on the outside, that means that all of this is happening 3 times. So I'm just going to write what's inside the parenthesis. So all of this that's inside of the parenthesis, I'm going to write it 3 times because I have that 3 on the outside. Okay, so I'm going to say 3xy. I'm going to put that in parentheses. And then another 3xy. And finally, my last 3xy. So all of those are done 3 times. Okay, so now that I have my 3's there, I can see I have this 3. So this is different than what we've done. Before, our coefficient, or our first number, was just that number. We didn't have to multiply it by anything. Well, now we have to multiply these. So we have 3 times 3 times 3. Well, 3 times 3 times 3 is going to give me a 27. 3 times 3 is 9, times another 3 is 27. Okay, and then I'm going to look and I see I have 1x right here, I have 1x right there, and I have 1x right there. So I can count all those x's up, and that's going to be x to the third, because I have 3 of them. Remember, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. And then I'm going to look at my y's, and I have 1y right here, I have a y right there, and I have a y right there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and write my y's, and I have 3 of those, so it's going to be y to the third. Number 7, we're going to start by simplifying what's inside the parentheses. When I look inside, I only have a 6. I don't have to multiply that 6 with anything. So I'm just going to start with my 6. So I have a 6, and then I'm going to simplify what's inside. So I have y to the first, x to the third, y to the fourth, and then x to the first again. Okay? I'm going to start with my x because x comes before y in the alphabet. So 6x. And when I look at my x's, I have 3 x's right here and 1 x right there. So I'm going to say that's going to be x to the fourth. Okay, then I'm going to look at my y's because y's come next in the alphabet. I have 1 y right here and I have 4 y's right there. So that's going to be y to the fifth. And then I don't have anything else. I've covered everything that I need to. So all of that is going to go in parentheses, and then you're going to raise it to the 2. Because we raised it to that 2, oops, this 2 right here, because it's raised to that 2, that's telling me I have to multiply it twice. Okay, so I'm going to take everything that's inside the parentheses and I'm going to do it twice. So I'm going to say 6x to the fourth, y to the fifth, put that in parentheses, and then multiply that by another 6x to the fourth, y to the fifth. Okay, 6 times 6 I know is 36, so I'm always going to start with my coefficient or my whole number. So 36. Then I'm going to move on to my x's. My first set of x's, I have 4 right here, and I also have 4 right there. So it's going to be x to the 8th. And then I'm going to move on to my y's. When I look at my y's, I have 5y right here and 5y right there. So it's going to be y to the 10th. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing with number 8. First, we're going to simplify what we can inside the parentheses. Okay, so first I'm going to put my numbers on. So I have 1p right here. I need an r needs a 1, and my q needs a 1. Okay, so I'm going to start with my -2 because that's not going to change. It's the only coefficient in there. Okay, so I have a -2. Then I'm going to look at my p's. So I'll write my p in. And when I'm looking at my p's, I have 1 p right here and 2 p's right there. So 1 p plus 2 p's is p to the third. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my q. I'm looking at my q. I have 3 q's right here and 1 q right there. So that's going to be q to the fourth. And then finally, I have my r is the only thing I have left. So I have my r right there. So, and that is the only r, so it's still going to be r to the first. Okay, so all of that is going in parentheses, and then I'm going to stick that that 2 on there, that little tiny 2, that exponent on there, to say how many times I have to do it. Because the 2 is there, that means I'm going to rewrite it all 2 times. So I'm going to say -2 p 3 q 4 r1. Put that in parentheses and then do it one more time because that 2. -2 p 3 q 4 r1. Okay, I'm going to start with my coefficient. So I have -2. Oops. I have -2 times -2. Remember, a negative and a negative turns into a positive. So that's going to give me a +4. And then I'm going to go and look at each one of my letters. So I have 3 p's right here and 3 p's right there. So that's going to give me p to the 6th. And then I have 4 q's right here and 4 q's right here. So 4 plus 4 is going to give me q to the 8th. And then finally, I have 1 r right here and 1 r right there. So that's going to give me r to the 2. And that's going to be your final answer. Okay, we're going to take this a little step further now. And now we're going to look, and we have 2 different things being multiplied together in parentheses. Well, just because they're in parentheses does not change what's inside there. So we're going to do the same process. My a is to the first, then I have b to the 6th. Then I'm multiplying because there's no add or subtract in the middle of those two parentheses, so I know I'm multiplying. So I have -7, A2, B3. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is multiply my coefficients. So my 4 and my -7. 4 times -7 is -28. Okay, and just like before, when we multiply exponents, we actually add them, and we can only add with like exponents. So I have a to the first and a to the second. So that's going to give me a to the third. And I can show you those. So I have a to the first and a to the second. That's where I got that a to the third. Okay, now I'm going to find my b's, and I have b to the sixth and b to the third. So b to the sixth and b to the third is going to give me b to the ninth. And that's going to be your final answer for that one. Okay, number 10 gets a little bit more complicated. We have 2a squared b squared times -4b, and then that has that little exponent 4 on it. So this little 4 only goes to these right here. So that second set. So that 4 only goes to that second set because that's the one that 4 is on there. So we're just going to go and start by writing 2a squared b squared, and that's going to be in parentheses. And then the next part, I'm going to write 4 times. So I have a -4b, 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 and last time -4b, and then close it, okay? Just like always, when we start these, we're gonna multiply our first number, our coefficient. Well, when I look at my coefficient, I have a 2, I have a -4, -4, -4, -4. So in your calculator, I want you to use, or I want you to type out 2 times -4 times -4 times -4 times -4. So all of those, when you multiply all those numbers, you're going to have 512. So your coefficient, the number before, is going to be 512. And then I'm going to count up my a's. Well, when I look, I only have an a right here. I don't have any other a's in my other set of parentheses. So I just have a to the second. So I'm going to write a to the second. Okay, once I have those, I'm going to go on to my b's. So I have 2 b's here. And remember, if there's no number on a b, all of those are 1s. So I'm going to stick a little 1 on there. You don't have to put those if you understand that, but if that helps, go ahead and throw those on. Okay, so I have b to the second, b to the first, b to the first, b to the first, b to the first. Okay, so all together, 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is going to give me b to the 6. And that's going to be your final answer for that one. Okay, the next one I'm going to look. Can I simplify anything in the parentheses? So when I look, I have a D, an E, and an F. So I cannot combine any of that in that first set of parentheses. Okay, and the second set, the one that starts with a -3, I have a D, an E, and an F. So I can't simplify anything in that set of parentheses. But when I'm looking at this, I see I have this 3. Remember, if that's to the third power, that third goes with all of these. So now I know that second set has to be written 3 different times. So I'm going to start with my first one, and that is going to be 2D squared E3F3. Okay, and my next one I have to write 3 different times. So I'm going to say -3D, and remember that's just going to be to the first, E3F, and that's going to be the first. And then I'm going to do that 2 more times, -3D, E, F, and 1 more. Okay, now just like before, we're going to start by multiplying our coefficients. So when I'm looking at my coefficient, I have a 2 here, a -3, -3, and -3. Okay, so I have 2 times -3 times -3 times -3. So you're just going to put that in your calculator just like that. Start with your 2, hit your multiplication, -3, multiplication, negative 3, multiplication, negative 3. That's going to give you a negative 54. Okay, so my coefficient is a negative 54. Then I'm going to look at my next one, which I have a D. I have two D's right here, one D right here, one D right here, and one D right there. So I'm looking at my D's. I have D to the 5th. Okay, the next thing I'm going to look at is my E's. I have E to the 3rd, E to the 3rd, E to the 3rd, and E to the 3rd. Okay, remember we're adding all those up, we're not multiplying. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, and you can't just, you're just going to add all those together, 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. And that's going to give you E, oops, I changed colors on you, to the 12. Okay, and finally we're going to look at our F's. So my F, oops, that didn't work. So I have F to the 3rd, F to the 1st, F to the 1st, and F to the 1st. So when I add all those together, 3 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, I'm going to get F to the 6. So that one's going to be my final answer. Okay, when I look at the second set, I notice that it has 2. So this one is squared with all of this. So I'm going to have to square everything that's in the middle. Okay, also when I look at those, I see I have one X, I have Y, and Z. Okay, I don't have any X's, Y's, or Z's on the inside. So I know that that 2 is going to just go on all of those, and I don't have to think about simplifying it on the inside first. Okay, same thing with this next one. I have this 3, and then I have that 3 is going to go with those. I have an X to the 3rd, Y, and a Z, and I don't have any X's, Y's, or Z's on the inside of that parenthesis, so I don't have to simplify those first. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to have 4x, y to the 3rd, z to the 3rd, and this one I'm going to do 2 times. 4x, y to the 3rd, z to the 3rd. Okay, and this next one, because I have a 3 on it, I'm going to do that one 3 times. I'm going to just change colors on here so you can see that. So I have 2x to the 3rd, y, z to the 4th, 2x to the 3rd, y, z to the 4th. And can I get that other one in there? Probably not. I'm just going to throw it down here. 2x to the 3rd, y, z to the 4th. Okay, so when I start this, I'm going to start by looking at my coefficients. So I have a 4, I have a 4, I have a 2, a 2, and a 2. So I'm going to multiply those. So 4 times 4 times 2 times 2 times 2, and that gives me 128 as my, 128 as my coefficient, or my number before. Okay, the next thing I'm going to look at is my y's. Okay, so when I look at my y, or sorry, not my y's, my x's, I have 1x here, 1x here, so I have 2 x's. And then I also have an x to the 3rd, an x to the 3rd, and an x to the 3rd. Okay, so when I add all those together, that's going to give me x to the 11th. So I'm going to write in x to the 11th. Okay, so my x's are all done. So now I'm going to move on to my y's. So I have y to the 3rd, y to the 3rd, y to the 2nd, y to the 2nd, and y to the 2nd. Okay, so when I look at all those, I have 9 total y's. So y to the 9th. Okay, finally I'm going to look at my z's. So I have z to the 3rd, z to the 3rd, z to the 4th, z to the 4th, and z to the 4th. Okay, all those together are going to give me z to the 18. That's an 18. And that's going to be the final answer there. Okay, so just please remember while you're doing this, you have to simplify inside the parentheses first. Once those are simplified inside the parentheses, then you can write them as many times as you need to, depending on what exponent you have. If you have questions, don't hesitate to stop and ask one of your teachers, send a Schoology message, but make sure you reach out if you need help understanding this information.